If you're going to be in southern Spain, I'm sure you're going to go to see the Mezquita in Cordoba or Cordoba or Cordoba, depending on how you pronounce it. But I would encourage you also to look at some of the Roman sites in the city. It was Colonia Patricia at that time, and it was a very prosperous part of the Roman Empire. It's located, of course, on the Guadalquivir River. I totally butchered that, I'm sure. And the pre-Roman settlements date, of course, back to the 8th century BC. The Roman settlement was founded in about 160 to 150 BC, and it officially became the Roman colony of Colonia Patricia in just about 45 BC. During the Civil War, the city supported Pompey the Great, so of course Caesar had to conquer it. But Seneca the Elder and Seneca the Younger were both from there, so a very famous past. It was eventually captured by the Byzantines, then the Visigoths, then the Muslims, and then the Christians eventually in 1236. And is typical for a city located in a prosperous area. The ancient structures are generally built over. So much of what's left from the Roman times are just traces, but they're definitely worth seeing. Not surprising for a town of its size, Colonia Patricia had a mint. Here I just have two examples of voda coins issued under Augustus. I have a whole video dedicated to voda coins. I'll put a card up in the top if you're interested. There were a significant number of coins minted at the city, both silver and gold, so I encourage you to look at that if you're at all interested. And you have to try the local foods, of course. Here we've got one of their famous desserts, the pastel Cordobas, which has a fruit filling and a crust on the bottom and top, as well as a cold tomato soup, which is not gazpacho. It's salmorejo, and there's actually a street named after it. It's much heartier than a gazpacho. If you want to catch a screenshot, you can make it. There's actually a recipe that's mounted on the wall of that street, and I would encourage you to try it out, especially if you're there. But obviously what you're there for are the sites. So there's a whole host of non-Roman as well as Roman sites, which I have listed here. Again, you can catch a screen capture if you want. The Mezquita is the most famous site. I've got the internet link here for buying tickets. I would encourage you, I'll show some pictures, but I encourage you to include the bell tower ticket if you can climb about 200 steps. There's also Alcazar of the Kings, which is a really nice place to stop. The Arab Baths, not a great stop, but if you're there, might as well. There's also Street of the Flowers. I thought that was kind of overrated. And there's a synagogue. Basically, if you're in southern Spain, the synagogues in general are overrated. But then in terms of Roman sites, there's the Roman Temple, the Roman Bridge, the Archeological Museum, the Roman Mausoleum, we missed that, I'll explain that, as well as the Palace of Maximiano. That is actually closed right now. I don't believe it's been open since the pandemic. If you're there, of course, food. The first one was, and I won't even try to pronounce it, was a winner. We ate there one night and it was great. Bodega Guzman is supposed to be very famous. We went there and there's definitely an atmosphere, but the food wasn't great and I wasn't too keen on the atmosphere. And then there's a couple other places. The first one's in a very fun location, but it's the food is okay. The food's okay. And then a couple I didn't try but were recommended. Of course, the most important stop for everyone is the Mezquita right here. And you can't miss that. As I said, I've got the link for the tickets. There's a lot to see inside the Mezquita. Obviously, there are these red and white arches that repeat going all the way down the building. Those are very impressive and probably the most famous, but also pay attention to the columns. They were taken from around the area, and you can see the capitals. The building was built and expanded several times over the centuries, and so each of these columns and capitals are fairly unique as you go from one phase of the building process to the next phase of the building. And then, of course, in the very center is the cathedral, which was built by the conquistadors. And so that's obviously a very impressive thing to see while you're inside as well. This is a shot taken from the top of the bell tower. Again, I'd encourage you to do the bell tower first. That way you can really get a lay of the land, both of the city around it, as well as this is the Mezquita. Each of these little rows is where you saw those arches. And then they built the cathedral right dead smack in the middle. So I'd suggest doing it before you see the rest of the city even. Hey, just for a second, if you're finding this video at all helpful or informative, you could just hit that like button. I would really appreciate it. Thank you. The next stop would be the Alcazar of the Christian Kings. It's just a little bit to the southwest of the Mezquita. We did not buy our tickets in advance. We just got them at the door, and I've seen a lot of people online saying that that's what they did. If you're there during peak season, you can buy them in advance. But as I said, we didn't have to because we were there in October. There's a decent amount to see. Of course, the gardens are at the end, but you come through the building first. So don't rush right outside to the gardens. Make sure you walk around inside the building, as well as you can take a little walking path along the walls. That's pretty neat too. This is a room full of mosaics, which they've done a very good job mounting on the wall. You can see me here puzzling. My wife captured that picture. One of my goals in life is to be able to identify characters in ancient art. I'm making a series of shorts on my YouTube channel, one with each of the major Greek and Roman gods and their attributes that help you identify them in these sorts of cases. It's more of a learning journey for me than anything else. In any case, I'm pretty sure the one on the right here is Oceana. So there's a couple of fish, and then he's got his horns. I don't really know much about the story other than that. And then the one on the left here is, I believe this is Eros, the Cupid. And then I'm guessing that the lady he's holding is Psyche, because who else would he be holding? In this one, I had to look up the woman because I didn't know the story here. But this guy, this good-looking guy with the eye in the center, that's a Cyclops, so it's Polyphemus. And in the story, he really had his hots for Galatea, so I'm sure that's who this is, the sea nymph. And I'm pretty sure that this serpent was a guy who Polyphemus didn't like, and so he killed him, and he got brought back as a river god of some sort. That's at least what I think this story is. And then right across from the Alcazar is the Roman bridge right here. So I would definitely make a stop and walk down that. It's a lot of fun. The bridge itself was built in the 1st century under Augustus. And then, of course, like most Roman bridges, it's been rebuilt several times over the years. And then at the end of the bridge is the Calleja Tower. I'm sure I pronounced that wrong. And it was the gate to the bridge built in the 12th century by the Muslims, I believe. And if you have a chance, you should really walk it at night. They light up the Mezquita, which is really, really pretty and makes for great photos. And it's a romantic stroll, after dinner stroll. And that's, of course, an American-style dinner stroll. If you're eating a Spanish after-dinner stroll, which dinner starts around 9 or 10 p.m., it'll end up being an early morning walk, I guess. Also down in this area is the Archeological Museum, which is pretty much a must-see if you're in the downtown area. It's located this is actually the old museum building, and then this is the new museum building. There's a very nice little square here that has restaurants with little umbrellas to eat under and lots of good people watching. There's some amazing wooden doors right here located here. So make sure that you come at some time when those doors are open so that you can walk through a little bit of the old museum as well as the new museum. It's got a fairly respectable collection of marbles and other local artifacts. And then the ancient theater of Cordoba, so the Roman theater, is located in the basement of the museum. It's included in your ticket, so make sure you go down and see that. It's not the greatest, but it's part of the museum, so it's good to see. And I'm not suggesting that you do things in this order, but I'm just trying to cover them in some reasonable fashion. So the next thing would be the Roman temple, which was built under the reign of Domitian. If you go to look at it, it's really just a bunch of Corinthian columns on top of a tall podium, which is pretty typical of the Roman style. It's kind of a seen it, done it, but give it a good walk around because you'll actually be able to see this layers of brick-faced concrete as well as stone-faced concrete, which is the opus inceratum. You see this all over southern Spain, so it's interesting to be able to see that in one place, as well as these ashlar masonry blocks on this side of the podium, which also called opus quadratum, and you get to see all of that in the same place, which is kind of nice. My memory was that there was a museum underneath this, but clearly I had some sort of fever-induced delirium. I was sick. We called it the Cordoba cough, but I was sick while we were there. And when I looked back at my pictures, everything that I had geomapped that I thought we saw under this under this temple ended up being back at the Archaeological Museum. So as I said, it's a seen it, done it, but it's definitely worth the time. Then finally, there's the Roman Mausoleum. It's located right here. It's kind of halfway between the train station and the old town with the Mezquita. It's also very close to the Mercado Victoria, which is a food court that probably is a pretty good place to catch a little grazing meal. It's kind of Cordoba's version of the Mercado San Miguel, which is a must-do if you happen to be in Madrid. The mausoleum dates from the 1st century BC, and if you are walking again, but from the old town to the train station or back and forth, it's going to be right there. There are several online comments that say you can't go inside. As I said, I was sick, and we just were on a beeline to get to the hotel and then back to the train station. So maybe it's just something you do in passing as you go through this particular area and take a look. Then the other last interesting thing, and we saw this in several areas of southern Spain, are these abandoned houses. And they have these little signs, and you'll see some cats as you're walking up to these abandoned properties. And that's sure as heck what they are. They're some kind of abandoned cat houses. So if you want to do a freeze frame and read the sign, I don't know. But I can't imagine what it would smell like inside. So those are the major Roman sites in Cordoba, as well as a few non-Roman sites. There's a lot of non-Roman sites I didn't include, including Art Museum, a couple of very nice galleries, but I wanted to make sure I hit the Roman stuff. If you've enjoyed this video, I'd encourage you to go ahead and hit the like and subscribe button. I have a bunch of other videos to other Roman sites that we've visited. And please leave comments down below if you've been to Cordoba or any of those other sites and want to add your own comments. Thank you very much. Bye-bye.